Hey guys, in the last video we created our first Angular application over here, and we took a brief we had a brief overview of some components within Angular and what we can do within it. In this video we're going to take a look at the architecture of the application from an IT standpoint. We're going to go ahead and start designing it in this program called Cloudcraft, and you can just search up Cloudcraft in Google. And we're going to be using a lot of Amazon Web Services resources. And Amazon Web Services is a cloud computing platform. And like I said earlier, it just has a bunch of resources that we'll be able to use. So these resources include storage, like in S3. We can use DNS services, so Route 53. We can use, like email services, so we don't have to create an email server, but we can use SES instead. We can create APIs very easily using API Gateway, and that's what we'll end up doing here. And so in a serverless application, which is what we have here, this architecture, we will also be taking advantage of something known as Lambda, so that we can perform a lot of functions that might need a server otherwise. And Lambda is really nice because it's a pay-as-you-use model, and actually everything here is going to be a pay-as-you-use model except for things like Route 53, meaning that you're only really paying for the requests that are being sent to your application over here. So if only 5 people a month are using your application, chances are costs are going to be so minimal that it's going to be almost like a free application for you. So let's start from the beginning of this. So you'll have a computer that's going to try to access an application that you have. Now, our application will be stored on S3, which is Amazon's simple storage service. And this allows us to create an endpoint for our application. So like if I put just an index.html file here in this bucket, and then I made it publicly accessible, it's going to give it like an endpoint that we could then access. So for instance, I had a application that I'm making for work, so this would be the endpoint for that. There's some rules about IP addresses, so that's why I can't actually access it. But this is what the URL might look like, where you have your bucket name followed by S3 website US followed by the region that it's in. So that would be cool, but really, we're creating a family photos application. So what we would really want to do is be able to go to something like www.familyphotos.com and then be able to access that application. But instead, what we would have, using this example right here, let me change this a little bit, minimize it. So using this example, we can, what do we have? Family photos. And this wouldn't be a real bucket name because this has to be a unique identifier, and family photos is likely already a bucket name. But anyways, this is something like that we would get from Amazon. We would get this endpoint, but we really want to go and resolve this domain name. So to do that, we'll take advantage of a service known as Route 53, which is the domain system service from Amazon. And we can resolve our name that we have. So like, let's say we purchased the domain name familyphotos.com, and we want to resolve it to whatever's in that S3 bucket. Well, the good thing is that Route 53 gives us an easy and very affordable way of doing this. I think it costs 50 cents a month to have a record in Route 53. But rather than point to that S3 bucket, we're going to use a CDN, which is a content delivery network. And this will make loading all of our assets a lot quicker. So this will speed everything up. So CloudFront is just going to point to S3, and it's going to be able to cache a lot of the resources in these edge locations that are dispersed, that are geographically dispersed in larger amounts. So there's a lot more edge locations that are in the world than there are S3 endpoints. And also these edge locations are caching assets. So other users are going to be able to load stuff much quicker. So this is really all that we need to focus on for the beginning stages of the application. And if you want to make it even easier, really, to host something, all you need is S3. S3 will give you an endpoint and you can give it to people. But again, it's going to come out in this weird looking string when we're trying to resolve something to our domain name. And CloudFront is, we're using CloudFront just to serve everything much quicker. So S3 is the storage. CloudFront you can think of as cache and speed for assets and files. Route 3 is that domain name resolution, so we're going to be able to map that domain name to these resources that we have. And again, we're not using any servers here, which is really nice. So to create our backend, we're going to want to focus on something like API Gateway that's going to allow us to create really quick APIs. So we'll be able to use methods like get and post to send requests to the backend of our application. And so this will typically fire off Lambda functions, and Lambda functions allow us to write like Node.js or PHP code without, again, having to provision any servers at all. So we just write the code and we upload it up to Lambda, and then we connect it to API Gateway. So we'll say whenever somebody makes a request on this, like a GET request on this API, to trigger off a Lambda function. And I know for sure that one function that I'm going to want to do is to email people, and this might be to send like either reset emails perhaps, or you might want to just I don't know. I'm pretty sure we're gonna need an email service here, so we'll implement SES, which is Amazon's simple email service, so we don't have to make any email servers at all. You just kind of configure your accounts for this and your domain names. And finally, we'll be using Firebase as our database. And Firebase is a NoSQL offering from Google, which works really nicely with these smaller applications. And it's one of the databases that I've grown to really enjoy. So that's talking about the architecture. Let's really quickly touch on MVC again. So I said that MVC stood for Model View Controller, and this is one method of breaking up your applications. So as you can see here, the idea behind Model View Controller really is, it's an architectural pattern. And again, it's that you really want to break your application up into separated components. And there's three main components that you break it up into, and that's going to be your model, your view, and then your controller. The model will handle stuff like data and business logic. So this will, in an example for Angular specifically, you might have something where you're exporting a class and it's named person. And now inside of this person, you're going to want some fields that they have to use as a constructor. So you can do something like constructor, and then like this, and then you'll have the like name and then type string. Like this, and then in another file you can go ahead and create a new you can instantiate that person, new person, and then do something like Kai. So that would be the model where you create a data model and then you enforce some specific rules on it, where in this case you have this name that has to be of type string. You'll have views, which is going to be like your HTML files. So these are going to display your UI and display your data and give representation to everything. And it's also going to provide mechanisms to fire off different functions of code like JavaScript for your controller. So you'll have a button, for instance, like you'll have like a button on a page, and then when you push that button, it does an action. That would be the controller part of your code. It's all that. Like we can kind of think of it as JavaScript when you push something and it fires off a function. So that you see here, it says that it's going to receive user requests and call appropriate resources to carry them out. And now before we end this video, I wanted to show you guys how to quickly wireframe something. And wireframing is going to give us, it's going to be kind of like creating the layout for the UI. So I'm going to use Adobe XD. We'll create a new app right here, and this is going to be a web app. So this wireframing is just a really quick way to kind of create a quick and dirty UI that you can use as a starting point. And just like that, you see with something like Adobe XD or just any other wireframing software, it's really easy to create a UI that you can then use as sort of like a plan or the foundation for your applications.